An apartment building above the streets of central Paris seems like a pretty good place to wake up during a zombie outbreak. You've got several floors between you and the roads outside, doors keeping things out, other apartments to loot for goodies, and a rooftop where you can scope out the surrounding area. Sam, the guy we're doing our case study on today, gets all of that and then some. He falls asleep in a back office during a party, misses the slaughter happening on the other side of the door, and wakes up after the city has gone completely silent. And I mean literally. The zombies in this movie don't moan, scream, or make much noise at all. Not vocally at least. So he starts off the apocalypse better than most, but ends up spending months in a building that he got locked down, got stocked up, but by the end of it, his mental health is deteriorating, and he failed to make an exit plan. So today, we're going inside that building to work out how someone with this good a starting position still ended up where he did, and where his windows to leave actually closed. That said, if you haven't seen this movie before, don't you worry about it. We'll break everything down as we go. Alright, so window 1. Sam's easiest exit shows up before he realizes he even needs one. It all starts with him showing up at his ex-girlfriend Fanny's apartment during a crowded party to grab his cassette tapes. After pestering her a bunch and getting cussed out by her new boyfriend, she sends him to the office at the end of the hall where he could find the tapes. On his way over, somebody bumps into him and busts his nose. Sam then closes the office door behind him and digs through the boxes until he finds the tapes, but then his nose starts bleeding from colliding with that guy in the hallway earlier. So he ends up sitting down and falling asleep with the door shut. If he had picked the box up and left, things would have been pretty normal outside. He might have made it home before the outbreak kicked off. Realistically though, falling asleep in that office probably saved him. The closed door put a barrier between him and the violence while the party got demolished. So, when Sam does open the office door the next day, he finds overturned furniture and blood spattered everywhere. After arming himself with what looks to be an ashtray, he sees Fanny is sitting motionless on the stairs outside the apartment. So, Sam calls to her, which causes Fanny to charge. He barely gets the apartment door closed before she reaches him, and after a short attempt to breach the apartment, she loses interest. That first encounter teaches Sam 2 early lessons. These zombies can explode into motion once they notice somebody. They also appear to lose interest very quickly once you break line of sight, so they're like rage infected with the memory span of a goldfish. That said, we then see Sam go to a window to try and find out exactly what's happening outside. He ends up seeing a man fighting off a zombie in a flat across the street trying to protect his family. Shortly after, he sees the same guy run outside alone toward a parked car. Then the man slams on the horn to signal his family to come out. The problem is he also alerted every zombie within earshot. When the man's wife and child run outside the building, Sam shouts down to them to get back inside, but they keep moving toward the vehicle. The child reaches the back seat, and the mother decides to hop in the front passenger side, but fails to close the door in time. Now, am I crazy, or was that a silly thing of her to do? They're clearly playing a game of inches right now, and she should have realized that when they barely got out of the apartment building without getting chomped on by the zombie her husband was holding off. She had an open door literally right in front of her, with her kid already safely inside, and she still decided to waste precious time trying to make it to the front seat. Like, what are we doing here, folks? Anyways, this was window 1, and it opened when he got his cassette tapes, and it closed when he decided to rest his eyes for the night. Sam could have just as easily ended up like that family across the street, or the people inside his flat, and the only reason he didn't is because of a locked door that kept him alive. And nothing about that night hinted that the end of the world was right around the corner. And that's why this is the invisible window. Alright, so with the dead wandering the streets, Sam searches the coats and bags left by the party guests. He gathers their phones and listens to all the messages delivered during the night of the outbreak. With that information, he now knows the disaster reached way beyond his apartment. So once the noise settles outside the apartment door, Sam makes his way to the roof to scan the city himself and verify the messages left on the phone. Below him, the zombies are wandering the streets, but there's no visible rescue effort or living person he can call to. Nothing on that roof offers him a way off the building either, nor would he want one before gathering his bearings. During the initial outbreak, if there isn't immediate danger, more often than not you're better off staying put and gathering supplies, collecting intel, and plotting out your next move. Never blindly run into the chaos. That's a surefire way to get yourself killed. Now, back in Fanny's apartment while cleaning the floors, Sam hears a shotgun blast from the flat below. He decides to press his ear against the floor, and a second shot punches through the boards inches from his face. After that, his boxers would probably need a cleaning just as much as that floor did. But instead, Sam decides to widen the hole and climb down instead of changing his underwear. But before committing, he bangs on the roof and calls down to see if anybody else is in there. Or anything. Could be zombies, right? So making noise is actually the right move here, because if there are zombies inside, you want to draw them out. We see this a lot in Walking Dead, which is a really cool thing I like to see. But yeah, once it seems safe enough to enter, he decides to go in. Inside, he finds a dead man and woman, likely a husband and wife. The woman was tied to a chair with a visible bite wound on her hand. Sam decides to take the shotgun from the man's hands and find some extra ammunition. After peeking in the hallway and reloading the gun, he exits the flat. We then see him work his way downward, closing open doors as he goes. Once he reaches the bottom floor, 2 visible zombies are gathered outside the front door, so he rushes over and locks the main door before they can get in. They bang around on the door for a bit, but just like Fanny, they eventually give up. So once again, this proves that breaking line of sight appears to make them lose interest, so that's kind of a cool mechanic with these zombies. For now, staying is the right call. He now has a general idea of what's going on outside, how dangerous it is, and he has no destination in mind just yet. And with the lobby doors holding back the threat of what's outside, it takes a little bit of stress off him, but he still has a building to clear before he can fully relax and plan his next move. The caretaker's flat is where things start to look up for him. Aside from the zombie reaching through the window while he searches, this room ends up turning up some pretty good stuff for him. He finds the keys for all the other flats, as well as a can of tuna to inhale. After finishing up in there, he goes up the stairs to tally up his supplies. Once he finishes, Sam puts on a leather jacket, which I absolutely love. Because we see way too many zombie movies where people are literally running around half naked in booty shorts with no care in the world about getting scratched or bitten. Obviously that's a bit of an exaggeration, but you get the point. I can't stand when they have nothing protecting them from bites and scratches. It just doesn't make any sense, especially when you know that's how the virus spreads. So I'm a big fan of how this movie is taking that into account instead of making the main character completely oblivious. That said, after putting on the jacket, he grabs the first set of keys to go inspect one of the flats. But the first one nearly ends everything for him. He goes inside, steps on some glass, and immediately gets charged. It turns out there was a whole family of zombies in there. A man, a woman, and a young girl. All of them turned. Sam manages to get the dad off, no diddy, and escape back into the corridor with the door shut behind him. Afterwards, he marks the door so he knows there's zombies on the inside. Fortunately, the other flats he checks end up being empty, and each room he clears means more food, water, tools, and anything that might be helpful for him going forward. He also finds a paintball gun, more cassette tapes, and an iPod Nano for all the old bastards like me. And a drum kit, which is great because he's a musician. Now, back outside the flat near the stairs, the lift starts moving on its own. Inside is an elderly man, already turned, held back by the safety gate. He doesn't try to get Sam like the others though, so Sam doesn't kill him. Instead, he fastens the gate shut with a belt and leaves him contained inside. Now I'm a little bit torn here because part of me would want to put it down just to be absolutely sure, but trapping him safely neutralizes the immediate threat while preserving ammo and avoiding any unnecessary risk, right? So you're not risking getting bitten or scratched, just leave him in there and lock his ass up. But there's a better reason to leave him though. Every zombie Sam has run into so far came at him within seconds of noticing him. But not this one. It's the first one he sees that behaves differently, and it's sitting in a cage sealed shut. And remember how they lose interest the moment you break line of sight? The second Sam walks away, that thing will stop caring. This also gives him a good opportunity to observe their behavior up close with the bars between them. Oh, and I always find the scene kind of funny. You know how dogs kind of yawn at you and it looks like they're silently screaming? That's basically what the zombie here is doing this entire time. He's trying to get to Sam. I mean, he's not trying to get to Sam, but the entire time he's looking at Sam. His mouth is just wide open. It's kind of funny. Honestly though, I would have killed the zombie. I'm not taking any chances. I'm gonna make a spear, I'm gonna stab that thing to death. What would you guys do out of curiosity? I don't think anybody would leave that thing alive. How the hell are you gonna sleep at night? Anyways, after all that, Sam hauls everything back to Fanny's apartment and winds down for the night by listening to some of those old cassette tapes. That's something he couldn't have done a few hours earlier. The tuna, the extra supplies, and the shotgun shells are all nice, but what he really did today was map out the building. Every marked and locked door means one less surprise, which buys him confidence to finally relax a little bit. The following day, we see Sam organize the supplies, portion some of the food, and mark passing days on a dirty window. Then he decides to make a whole bunch of noise by playing the drum kit, which does exactly what you think it would. It draws in every zombie within earshot of the drums. He already knew that calling to his ex-girlfriend made her charge him. He saw that honking the car horn also attracted the zombies. And when he stepped on broken glass, he alerted the zombies inside that apartment who attacked him. So I'm not entirely sure why he decided to just broadcast his entire location to the neighborhood, but at least now he knows without a shadow of a doubt the noise attracts the dead. The following day, after eating breakfast, he decides to do some target practice with his new paintball gun. He starts aiming for all the zombies in the Polaroid photos that are on the wall to burn time and help cope with his isolation. By this point, he's over a month into the zombie apocalypse, which we can figure out by counting the X's on the window. Meanwhile, Sam starts to smell something off inside of his flat. It turns out the couple downstairs, they've begun to decompose, and the smell has started coming up through the hole in his floor. Now there's another cool thing the movie gets right, and it's something I brought up in previous videos. It's the smell. Every fridge in that building stopped working weeks ago, so everything inside of them is rotting, along with whatever food was left out during the initial outbreak. And that's before you count the bodies. And the bodies are the real issue. A single dead mouse in a wall or floorboard could stink up an entire room for weeks. I don't know if you've experienced it, but it's pretty disgusting. Now, Put a bunch of corpses inside of those rooms instead and leave them there for a couple of weeks, and I'm sure you can imagine how that might smell as time passes. And just in case you can't imagine it, let me try and make that picture a little bit more clear. Picture the biological stench of active human decomposition with an odor of severe medical infection with a sickly sweet undertone to it. There would also be hints of fecal and sewage notes coming from the digestive tract spilling out of the body. And based on forensic science and the physical reality of decaying tissue, the smell would trigger an immediate instinctual fight or flight gag reflex. So that's what you'd be breathing in and day out, literally everywhere. So when you see hordes of zombies in TV shows like The Walking Dead, and the characters aren't even flinching, that's absolute bullshit. A massive horde of zombies would create a choking, inescapable wall of air that could cause a living person's lungs to literally seize up and induce immediate vomiting. There's just no way in hell anybody could get anywhere near it unfazed. So when you see that in The Walking Dead, call bullshit on it. It's fucking stupid. Anyways, I digress. I'm going on a bit of a tangent here as I do, but I tip my hat off to this movie for doing that, because it would be stanky as fuck. Alright, so back with Sam. We see that he can't quite bring himself to throw the bodies off the balcony, so he wraps them up in sleeping bags and lays them together on their bed and seals the room. I'd be tossing their asses off the balcony, I'm sorry. There's just no way in hell I'm fucking breathing that shit in. But to be fair, that is likely the better choice for his mental health. But let's be real here, he'd absolutely be smelling the stench from those bodies. There's just no getting around it. Anyways, a little later we see Sam showering, and this is when the water finally cuts out on him. This is why you always want to fill up every single thing you can get your hands on with water during a situation like this. I'm talking sinks, tubs, containers, you name it. That way if the water does cut out, you're not completely screwed. The thing is, you can survive 3 to 7 days without water, but up to 2 months without food. So during any sort of collapse, you absolutely need to secure water. There's no other way around it. You need that water. So fill that shit up. Now we fast forward to later in the evening when Sam is sleeping. He has a nightmare where zombies break into his room and start tearing him apart. The following day we see Sam exercising, which I'm not really a fan of in zombie movies, and I'm not really sure why it's never mentioned. It just seems like a massive oversight. If you think about it logically, he's already rationing his food, and he's burning through calories by staying active. I get that he's trying to keep busy, and rule 1 is cardio, but you're digging yourself to an early grave, the more calories you burn. Anyways, while jogging through the building, he decides to stop by the lift. The zombie inside is reaching out, so Sam very intelligently reaches for its hand and shakes it. And yes, that was sarcasm. There's no version of this where something is visibly infected or visibly dead and moving around, and you making physical contact with it makes any sort of sense. Letting that thing grip your hand with its long-ass fingernails is the lowest IQ thing you could do unless you have a death wish. All it could take is one scratch and it's game over, so why even risk it? That aside, it turns out Sam learned that the zombie's name was Alfred, so he introduces himself with that totally not dangerous firm handshake. A little later it starts raining, so Sam places pots and other containers on the roof for drinking and bathing water. Personally, I'd be a lot less concerned about smelling like booty hole, and more concerned about wasting drinking water at this point. To each their own though. We then see him light up a fat blunt and start chatting up Alfred, and yes, I know it's a cigar, but it would be funnier if it was a blunt. At this point in the movie, we can see the loneliness really starting to set in. For some people, it wouldn't have hit them yet, especially if you're an introvert, but if you're an extrovert, you'd likely be kicking it back and chatting Alfred up by now. And if you're interested in how you would have reacted, just think back to COVID. I had friends who were introverts who just played games the entire time, and nothing really felt out of the norm for them. They're just kind of going about their lives. But then there's the people who are extroverts and flourished off of having social interactions who just couldn't bear it. They couldn't handle it. It was like the end of the world for them. So it's interesting to see how that can go either way for people, depending on which kind of person you are. As for our boy Sam, we're slowly starting to see him make mistakes and slowly come undone. He drew that crowd of zombies with the drums, he lost his primary water source, and he's burning through calories by doing cardio to try and keep busy, and he put his bare hand inside the cage with a zombie. Later that day, we'll check out the streets with the scope on the paintball gun he found earlier. He sees a cat wandering around outside. So he takes some tuna downstairs, checks the entrance, and opens the door after the area seems clear. So for the very first time since waking up in the zombie apocalypse, he opens the front door and actually stress tests the streets. Sam tries to call the cat over, but he hears something and turns back around. So he decides to prop the door open with his gun and risk it for some good puss. And you can't blame him. He's been isolated this entire time, so having a companion would be good for his mental health. That, and I personally wouldn't want to leave the cat out there to get chomped on by zombies. So Sam decides to get on all fours and start looking under the cars. While searching, a zombie notices him and makes a mad dash over. He climbs into the car, kicks the attacker away through the passenger window, slides into the back seat, and escapes through one of the back doors. Fortunately, he manages to get back into the flat and shut the door behind him before anything could get inside. Afterwards, Sam peeks outside from the ground floor window and sees a cat sitting near one of the zombies. It turns out the zombies don't actually care about the cat, and out of anger for almost losing his life, Sam raises the shotgun and fires at the cat. We don't actually see if he hits the cat, but we can all assume the kitty is now with Harambe up in heaven. And as you can imagine, the blast from the shotgun brings the surrounding zombies in the area straight to the building, and they start slapping at the window with their bare hands. Afterwards, Sam notices blood on the floor and realizes that his shins are all scratched up, and he has no idea if he scratched himself on something outside or if one of the zombies got him. So he sits in front of a mirror with a shotgun under his chin, waiting for symptoms to show up. Instead, he ends up falling asleep, and the weapon slips, then fires without hitting him. He wakes up unfazed by the bullet and not infected, so he breaks out into laughter. Alright, so what can we learn from Sam here? Well, the trip outside was a complete disaster, but it wasn't a complete waste. Sam went out there for the cat and came back with the first real intel he's had since he woke up in the apocalypse, because now he knows the streets can actually be crossed, and that by trapping himself inside of a car could buy him time. These zombies also don't appear strong enough to shatter glass, so these are all things you'd want to take note of. The problem is that Sam went outside due to loneliness and longing for some kind of companionship. If he'd gone out for information instead, he would actually have come back with a plan. Alright, so this next stretch here is where I think Sam misses his first real window to start leaving, or trying to at least slowly work his way out of the neighborhood. An undisclosed amount of time later, Sam hears footsteps upstairs, but he doesn't know if someone's actually there, or if his mind's playing tricks on him. Then he sees a figure in a building across the street, so he goes up to the roof to see if he can spot them again from a higher position, but he doesn't have any luck. Back inside, and with the cold weather starting to roll in, Sam decides to waste more drinking water on a bath. We can also see that his supplies are starting to run low, so the clock is ticking, and he has to be aware of that by now. While bathing, he hears more sounds around his flat, but after all this time isolated on his own, we could assume that it's probably just the paranoia that has its hooks in him. And I wonder if he saves that bathing water. I mean, ass water is better than no water, right? Shortly after his bath, he looks outside his window and imagines himself finally growing some balls and going back outside. But he's just way too traumatized by now, especially after his failed attempt to get the cat. The problem is that he's running on borrowed time, and he doesn't seem to realize it. Or maybe he does. He doesn't act like it though. He's ignoring the elephant in the room and taking it day by day. That said, the zombies that were lingering around outside appear to all have left the area, so this could have been another opportunity for him to test the streets, but instead he lets his frustration take over his emotions. He starts pounding back some booze and splashes some on poor Alfred's face. Afterwards, he decides to head to the room with the drum kit and starts playing as loudly as he can while screaming at the top of his lungs. I guess that's one way to test the streets, or half the city. Seriously though, what a wasted opportunity. Instead of drawing them all back over here, he could have used this break in the streets to actually go outside and see if he could make it into one of those other buildings. Or even just try and reach one of the empty cars scattered around the road to see what's inside. And honestly, if Sam wasn't so busy messing up, this should have been his real window to leave. His trip for the cat outside that blew up in his face sucked, but it proved something important. It was survivable outside the safety of the building. Had he remembered every lesson up till now and had a bug-out bag actually packed, he could have grabbed his stuff and left once the streets cleared up. And by this point in the movie, he had enough information to make an educated move instead of blindly running into the street. He didn't even have to abandon the building for good yet. He could have just tested one of the nearby buildings and started figuring out a route beyond this block while he still had a safe place to retreat to. And before somebody points out that zombies were obviously still nearby, yes, I'm aware. I can see them literally flooding down the street as he bangs on those drums. I'm only talking about the immediate street in front of the building, being clear enough to actually use for the very first time. That doesn't make leaving safe. It's almost never going to be safe in a zombie apocalypse. But right now he has an opening to move while the threat isn't standing directly outside his front door. Another option would be to wait till winter, since we could already see that it's starting to get cold outside. The problem is that now you're gambling on Paris getting cold enough for long enough to actually immobilize these things. That might happen during a bad cold snap, but there's absolutely no guarantee of it. If Sam has enough supplies to last, he could wait and see what winter does. I just wouldn't make my entire escape plan depend on the weather eventually solving the zombie problem for me, especially while my supplies are running low. So this was very likely the biggest missed opportunity of the movie. Instead, he decides to bring the entire neighborhood over, and then they start pulling some World War Z type shit and start climbing on top of each other to try and get up to the balcony. And I gotta say, the fact that they vocally make no noise makes it a lot more eerie. You mostly just hear their skin slapping against each other. And interestingly enough, the zombies hang around a lot longer this time. During previous encounters, they'd lose interest pretty damn quick. Anyway, Sam ends up apologizing to Alfred for his little outburst earlier. Afterwards, he starts listening to some more of his recordings while being visibly distressed. He decides to go to sleep after, and while sleeping, he hears noises outside of his room. Only this time it's not a dream. So he fires his shotgun at whatever was moving around outside his door, and it ends up being a woman, who was likely the person he saw across the street earlier. He carries her to the bed, removes the buckshot from her abdomen, and begs her to stay with him as she starts to fade away. After removing the buckshot, Sam goes out to the hallway and finds her backpack with climbing gear. The following morning, Sam sees the woman's awake. She introduces herself as Sarah, says she has moved between rooftops, and that she met other survivors in apartments hiding just like him. She also warns that the noise he made has attracted more zombies that are now hanging around the building. They walk through the building together and hang out for the day, make some music, but as time passes and food runs lower, Sam returns to the crossed-out apartment with the family in it. He cuts a hole through the door and kills the zombies inside. He comes back upstairs with 2 bags of supplies, and that haul makes staying feel even more reasonable. Sam then finds Sarah on the rooftop looking for a way out their building, which is something Sam hasn't done this entire time. While he's been getting cozy, Sarah has constantly been moving from building to building. She says going down is out of the question. The only solution is to jump across. She argues that they have to leave and that the zombies will eventually get in, but Sam wants to stay. But she says either they get in, or you eventually blow your own brains out. Afterwards, she storms away. Sam changes his mind and speaks through a closed door, telling her they need to go. But when she doesn't answer, he enters the room where he was treating her. It turns out Sarah is still laying exactly where he left her after the shooting. She never actually woke up, so the meals and the rooftop argument all happen inside of his mind. So he sits beside her, takes her hand and covers her with a sheet, and places candles and her personal belongings around her. Now the first visible window to leave finally opens when Sam goes into Sarah's backpack. But to be perfectly clear, I think Sam has already missed the window where he should have already been moving. But Sarah's backpack gives him something even better, the safest exit he's been offered so far. Inside her backpack, he finds a rope, a grappling hook, and a digital camera. The photograph shows Sarah with her family and later images she took of Sam. So she really did reach him from the outside, proving that it can be done. Now he can finally do something he couldn't do during any earlier phase. He can carry the hook to the roof, throw it across the gap, secure a line, and attempt to reach the neighboring rooftops without touching the streets. Up to this point, every plan ran on the same problem. The lobby takes Sam toward the zombie-infested streets, while the roof leaves him staring across the gap with no way across. So this is where he finally had to leave. Take the rope, the hook, a light bag, and whatever food you can carry. Then get onto the neighboring roof before making another loud move inside. Sam still does have an argument for staying though, because he did just recover 2 more bags of food, and it's not like the apartment is compromised yet, so leaving is a tough choice to be fair. But look at what staying actually gets him. The taps are dead, and the only water coming into this building now is whatever falls out of the sky. The food is a pile that only gets smaller by the day, the ground floor is packed with the dead because he decided to go nuts on the drums, and the closest thing he has to another person to socialize with is a dead guy behind an elevator gate. So with the hook and rope in front of him, Sam could finally free himself from this place and try to reach somewhere else. So sure enough, Sam starts getting ready to leave. But first, he decides to burn the tapes that he came for at the start of the movie inside of a bathtub. After that, he carries Sarah's rope and grappling hook to the roof and starts figuring out a way across. But then Sam remembers Alfred before leaving and goes back downstairs to the lift. He removes the belt from the gate and lets Alfred step out and follow him upstairs. And it's shocking to me how much he trusts Alfred not to take a bite out of his ass while going up those stairs. After shutting the door behind Alfred, the fire alarm goes off in the building before Sam could get back to the roof. And that alarm does exactly what you think it's gonna do. It rings the dinner bell for every zombie within spitting distance. So Sam basically gave us a masterclass of what not to do when you're trying to escape a building surrounded by zombies. In the span of about 10 minutes, he sets a fire inside the building, keeping him safe from the dead outside, walks away from the gear on the roof before he finished setting it up, and then he goes to release a zombie he's been chatting to for months, and he turns his back on it while leading it up the stairs. Alright, so the final window closes when the fire alarm starts, and the zombies come busting through the front door of the apartment building. When they breach the building, Sam dispatches a few of them before losing the gun and getting driven backwards into the elevator while hundreds of zombies fled up the stairs and reach for him through the gate. Now with the building flooding with zombies, Sam climbs through the hatch of the elevator and works his way up the shaft. One zombie does chase him around though, but he manages to get away from it by pinning it under a couch and climbing through the hole in the roof he made when he climbed down for the shotgun earlier in the movie. Now back in Fanny's flat, smoke has filled the room and zombies are wandering around inside of it. Their view is obscured, so Sam slows down and works past them towards the stairs. What's interesting is that the zombies retained a lot of their human senses, so they're definitely a lot more like rage infected than your typical zombie. And I did confirm that they were actually zombies before I started this video. That said, Sam does manage to sneak his way through and get back to the roof. We then see him throw a hook toward the neighboring building. He fails his first attempt, sees a zombie get to the roof, then gets it across on the second try. Sam secures the rope, jumps, and slams extremely hard into the building across. He briefly knocked himself out after too. He ends up hanging there for a bit, while a zombie watches him from a window. When he snaps out of it, Sam pulls himself up the rope and climbs onto the rooftop. He then breathes a sigh of relief for a moment, hears something chiming off in the distance hinting that there might be more people out there, then stands and looks across Paris. And that's where our movie ends. Alright, so what can we actually learn from our boy Sam in this movie as a whole? Well, a secure position doesn't always keep you fed, hydrated, or safe forever, but it does give you time to gather intel and plan out your next move. Sam unfortunately did not plan a route out until the very last second. He had months to prepare for this, but he didn't actually plan a way out until the last 15 minutes of the movie. How could we use that information though? Well, by building yourself a picture of everything you can see from the safety of your apartment building, you could figure out if the streets are clear, where the zombies are lingering off to, which buildings have movement inside of them, and what routes lead where, as well as what's along them. And there is an argument for Sam staying longer in this movie, since he hadn't fully looted the place yet, but sooner or later he would have to move. No position's good forever. And I think my base location series I did early on my YouTube channel kind of proved that. Short term, there's a lot of good places. Long term, that kind of breaks down. Alright guys, if you made it this far, I appreciate that as always. And if you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing. It might not save you during a zombie apocalypse, but it'll make the end of the world a lot more interesting. And YouTube thinks you'll like this video. If you've already seen it, I've got a playlist of a lot more just like it. Right here. It looks like I'm playing with balls, but it's right here.